Good day, everyone. Welcome to another edition of DevOps Unbound. First of all, thank you for coming on. For those of you who may not be familiar with what we do here on DevOps Unbound, let me quickly give you a little training primer here. So DevOps Unbound is a bi-weekly, meaning every 2 weeks, video show that we put on here on Techstrong TV. 2 out of every 3 of our shows are pre-recorded in our studios, and we put them out on our regular daily Techstrong TV stream. And you're more than welcome to see them. You can also watch them on demand if you go to techstrong.tv under series, under DevOps Unbound. And we've been doing DevOps Unbound for over 2 years. And there's quite a number of episodes there that you can catch up on. Every single one, I believe, is available on demand. However, 1 out of every 3 shows or so, we do this, a live DevOps Unbound. And the reason we do it is we've discovered there is nothing better than having a live audience involved in our discussion. And so we do these to hear from you, to listen to you, to let you drive our discussion if possible. It always amazes me. We get people from all over the world who log on to these DevOps Unbounds. And whether you are somewhere in Asia Pac or India or EMEA or Latin America or here in North America, we love that you're here. We want to hear from you. We want to hear questions you may have of our panelists. We want to hear your thoughts and comments on subject matter. You are as much a part of this as any of us are. And so we want to hear from you. How do we hear from you? Well, unfortunately, I can't get all of your faces up here like we have our panelists. No, maybe we could. A lot of you probably wouldn't want to. But we have this great communication window in BigMarker, our online event software here. And for many of you, you're in your browser. If you look in the right-hand side of the browser, you'll see that communication window. And by default, it's under chat, C-H-A. Well, I'm telling you how to spell chat. You probably know how to spell chat. But if you look under chat and public, you'll see that there's already some chats out there. People have, well, Mitchell and Jared have already logged in here. Feel free to log in. Let us know where you're from or what you have, what's going on. But this is the primary way for you to communicate with us. You could put questions in here. You could put comments in here. The thing about the public chat is once you put it in there, everyone logged on, other guests as well, can see it, and they may choose to answer you, not necessarily our panel. Everyone will answer you. So it's pretty cool, to have just the audience answering their own questions in a way. I want to call your attention next to chat is something called Q&A. And Q&A is if you have a question or comment specifically for the panel, if you put it in there, we will get to it and I'll bubble it up to the panel and we'll do our best to get our feedback from our panel members. So Q&A, if you want something specifically to the panel, chat public, if you just want to put it out there, and that may very well go to the panel as well. I just want to bring one other thing to your attention today. We're going to be using our polls feature throughout the course of today's presentation. And Mitchell, introduce Mitchell in a moment. Mitchell will be running the polls. When we run the polls, those polls are only as good as your answers. So please log on, answer the polling questions so that we can, make heads or tails and sense out of who you are, what's important to you, and what do you think about some of these issues. So that's enough on that. Let me jump into today's show. Today's show is called Goin Mobile in DevOps Workflows. Like all of our DevOps Unbound, these are produced by Techstrong Group, Techstrong TV, and DevOps Unbound, we are blessed to have as a sponsor a company called Tricentis. Many of you may already be familiar with Tricentis. They are a worldwide leader in automated testing and continuous testing, and have really kind of taken a real market leader for years already in that space, in the DevOps space. So many thanks to Tricentis for their sponsorship. Before I introduce our panel members, I also want to call out two people who we couldn't do these without. Jody Ashley is the executive producer of most of the video series at Techstrong Group. So many thanks to Jody. And specifically on DevOps Unbound, we have a woman, Lanier Norval, who works with Tricentis. But Lanier is great at reaching out, getting us amazing guests to come on here, as well as helping us guide the discussions, the topics, and everything we do. So many thanks to Lanier and Jody. We've got that out of the way. Let me now go finally to our panel members. First of all, I want to introduce you to Asaf Sar. I hope I pronounced that right? Asaf has been with us before, and I could see from his little chat window, he's joining us from a hotel room in the Czech Republic, where it's probably closer to dinner time. Asaf, welcome. Thanks for coming back again.
Thank you very much, Alan. Super happy to be here. Thank you for the invite. Few words about myself. As said, I'm in Prague, so I'm here at our office, Tricentis office in Prague, on a short business trip. So happy to be here. I'm with Tricentis for around about 2.5 years, VP of Product Management, responsible for Tosca, the flagship product of Tricentis, and overall mobile strategy, responsible for the mobile offering and mobile strategy of Tricentis. I'm with the mobile space for quite some time. Before that, I always spent a few years at Sauce Labs and a few years at Perfecto Mobile, running the mobile cloud offering, mobile testing from product management, and spent many years at SAP. A lot of gray hair, so quite a veteran in the space, I'd say.
Absolutely. I'm familiar with both of those companies. Both Perfecto was Perfecto Mobile. That was
Correct.
That was their thing. Asaf, welcome and thanks.
Thank you.
Joining Asaf and myself is Sophia Palamarchuk. Palamarchuk? Did I say it close?
Perfect.
Sophia joins us from Vancouver. Actually, we're going to be out in Vancouver at the Linux Foundation Open Source Conference, I think I want to say June. But Sophia, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Alan and Mitch, for having me. A pleasure to be here. A bit of background myself. I have around 10 years of experience in testing, coming first from a consulting company that currently I'm a board member. And then 5 years ago, we embarked into specifically mobile testing, launching our own product. So currently I'm the CEO of Aptim, a solution focused on mobile performance testing and monitoring. So a lot to talk today about challenges in that space, and happy to share everything I've learned in these past years by launching a startup and working with clients all over the world in their DevOps journey.
Excellent. Thank you. See, it looks like you're a fellow string instrument fan as well, looking behind there. Thank you for joining us. Last but not least is my co-host here on DevOps Unbound. And he's a guitar nut, as you can tell from his background. That's not a fake background. I've been there. Let me introduce you to our CTO here at Techstrong Group. He's also principal analyst at Techstrong Research, and my friend for 20-something years, Mitch Ashley. Hey, Mitch, welcome.
It's always good to be here. I'm not sure if I'm a guitar nut or a nut who owns guitars. A little bit of both, I think. So.
Okay, I'll go with it.
By the way, the open source conference is that will be out in Vancouver is May 10th to the 12th. Yeah. So looking forward.
Nice time.
I love Vancouver. What an amazing, as Prague is.
Yeah.
Just two beautiful cities.
It's a good time to be in Vancouver, Sophia. I know what you're saying there.
Currently, it's very cold and rainy, but
it'll be nicer by May, hopefully.
By May.
The weather this year is a little crazy, but that's a whole other story. We have folks from Greece here as well, and good. All right. So look, guys, I'm old enough to remember when there actually used to be a debate about whether you needed to have like a separate mobile app strategy versus just an app development strategy. And then testing, other than testing on different form factors, right? We're testing on phones and other mobile form factors. What's really the difference? But I think we've come a long way since then. I think we realize that mobile app development is a different animal, right?
Yeah.
Maybe, and I forget my scientific it's still app development. No one's saying it's not that, obviously, but it's a different species. It's a different animal, and it needs its own kind of rules, its own kind of environments, certainly its own kinds of testing, right? QA is just very different in these mobile apps. Both of you have been involved in this for some time, but Asaf, if it's okay, I'm going to ask you to kind of kick us off here. What's different about it? Why different? And how does that kind of manifest itself?
Yeah, it's mobile, right? It's on the move, which is different, right? So mobile devices are basically we are dealing with two operating systems, iOS and Android. Although it's two, it used to be more, but now we are roundabout close to like on two operating systems. But the mobile variety is huge. It's different. Like an iPad application is different than an iPhone app, right? Though in terms of the screen size, in terms of capabilities, there are capabilities which are unique here and there. If you're working with your desktop or with your desktop application, be it a native app on Windows or on a Mac, or whether it's a browser app, it's static. It sits within your location. It's not in the move. So there is the complexity of network conditions, for example, right? If you are dealing with a Wi-Fi connectivity, or if you are switching to 3G, 4G, and 5G, right? Data stream is completely different. Mobile is a presentation. It's of the application, but a lot of the processing is happening on the background or on the backend. So this is another layer of connectivity of challenges. You need to have very robust connectivity to the backend system. The devices introduce different sensors, which allows you, right? You are dealing with GPS, you are dealing with face recognition, different security elements. The complexity in the mobile space is much higher than a desktop or a web application. And this introduces a lot of challenges to the developers and the testers. So this space is really complex relative to normal application development.
Sophia, anything to add to that?
Yes, besides what Asaf mentioned, which I think connectivity is a big challenge, is when you think about how you develop mobile apps and how you push apps to your users and updates, you have the app stores. And there's a huge difference from, for example, web development, where you can actually push updates at continuously at any time of the day, and all your users are going to get that update almost instantly. When it comes to mobile apps, as a developer, the feedback loop from production it takes more time, because your app has to be approved by the app stores. Then the users have to sometimes manually update, sometimes it's automated, depending how the configurations are. So you don't really control as much the whole release process as it happens sometimes with web. So I think that brings a lot of challenges in what strategy to take. Should we wait to production to test some features? Should we test them before? Because we probably have to wait 2 weeks to get some feedback from a user if something happened that it's an issue for them. So I think that brings complexity in the process. The fact that your app needs to be approved and go through a third party to actually reach your users, right? And that's something that makes mobile development different from any other type of development, at least today, and how the world works, right?
Yeah, I would like to add to that something, like you mentioned app stores, Sophia. But let's go back to the beginning, where an organization decides that it goes mobile and everyone goes mobile, right? Then the development teams is facing the challenge: do I go native application? Do I go web application? Am I building a hybrid application? I'm developing once and I target it to Android or iOS, or so all that is really complex. Defining or really understanding your target audience, what you want to achieve, and how you tackle that. And eventually, it all affects your testing strategy, right? If you're building a native application, do I go with the native testing frameworks that are along that? or building something that is more easier, and our QA testing team or the developers that are actually doing testing are used to, right? If I'm used to write something as a Selenium kind of like framework in JavaScript or in Java or in .NET, do I do the same also for mobile testing, or I'm doing that a little bit different? So the type of application is another layer of complexity in development and eventually in testing.
Great.
I'm going to jump in on that, Alan, too, because it's interesting. We are going through this ourselves as Techstrong, doing the next generation of our app. And it's, do you do a web view? Do you do native, cross-platform? It kind of reminds me of the early days of SaaS, when we were putting our applications, or maybe even cloud, just putting our applications in the cloud. Now we don't control the infrastructure, and it can change from underneath us. But in the case of mobile, yes, there's a lot of ways of doing native or versus web, or other ways, frameworks for mobile. But also, we're running on multiple operating systems. There's still a lot of iOS 7 or 8, and we're on 16. Do we support all those? Do the app stores support on that? So there's a lot of forced change on us and variety of change. And what's interesting, too, is I think sort of our counterparts, the non-technical counterparts in the organization, like product managers, kind of see mobile as either mobile first, or, hey, we yeah, of course we want a mobile app. Yeah, let's do that. Well, it's a lot more to it than that, of course.
You're not kidding. Hey, Mitch, you know what? I think this is a great time maybe to run out the first poll question.
Absolutely.
So let's hear from our audience about, where they are in terms of DevOps, using DevOps on your mobile app.
Great. We have that poll open out there. So jump right in, share with us. Talk about, are you using DevOps as part of your mobile development? Or is it kind of, not doing DevOps yet? Given DevOps is a big part.
Sometimes people are shy about doing these.
It's
a good start.
We don't collect your name. We're not going to email you. We're not going to
we have no idea whose responses
about
are who. But the more we get, the better of an idea we have. Well, what's the world out there like?
Yep. Good. We'll leave it open for a few more. Keep punching that button.
Punching the like While button. We're punching it, though, let's do the let's go to the map, John. And looking at the responses, I think we see that you closed it on us, Mitch, huh?
Yes. Okay. Let's see here. What did I do? Okay, Jared, I need your help. I need to post.
Well, we got just go to closed and it should pop back on.
There we go.
Oh, we're voting again. We got to start over.
My bad. Sorry.
Oh no, it's not letting me. All right. Anyway, the bottom line here is I'll share this with you. 57%, maybe more, almost 60% of the audience said they're currently using DevOps for their mobile app development. The next biggest trend, you closed it again on me, Mitch. All right, hold on.
I didn't click it, but yes.
Oh. Okay, so we had 55%, let's say, are using DevOps for your mobile app. About 20% are not, and about 27%, so almost twice as much, said they will, and they're not currently, but they will in 2023. So certainly it's something coming up there, up and coming. So with that being said, I want to talk specifically about testing challenges in mobile apps, right? Because to your point, Asaf, I think both Android and iOS, and then some of the other mobile app kind of environment developer tools have done a good job of giving developers a place to develop it. I don't know if testing is sort of caught up in Sophia. I would bet that's why you guys started your company 5 years ago, because you saw this need in the market as well.
Yes, and it came from our own experience, right? We were just doing the job and we weren't happy with the current tooling. Specifically for performance, there's a lot of maturity in tooling for web and for backend. But when it comes to client-side performance, and by this I mean how the actual app behaves on the device, because you actually have to install it in a device that is owned by a user, that is sharing resources with other apps, that is just traveling around the world and connecting to different networks and trying to understand really how good the user experience is of your app. And as Mitch mentioned, installing in different operating systems, in different types of devices and brands, just becomes a huge challenge. So we weren't happy at the time with the current tooling, and we embarked in this project of first creating a tool for us, and then that became its own company. The biggest challenges that we've seen is, and we already mentioned this, there's a lot of decisions you have to make when it comes to developing an app, how you're going to testing, what frameworks you're going to be using. And a lot of that, it's not only what tools are available, but what skills do I have in my team. Do I have to hire, 2 different teams, iOS or Android if I'm going native? Do I have to, to have one centralized team that just takes care of the whole mobile stack, both from backend and front-end perspective? Do I share resources with other teams because I have, some web components in my app and maybe they might help? So there's a lot of decisions that come into place. And in our experience, it usually starts with how can I get my app to the market faster? And then I figure out, how do I improve the process? And then I figure out how I add the testing and what types of checks do I need to have in my pipeline and things like that, right? So sometimes that first decision of, that MVP, which is very common in mobile apps, you just do it with, hybrid networks, React Native, something that it's just easy to build and launch. And then over time, based on what we've seen in the market, usually you migrate to maybe a native framework because you have more control on the experience. But again, that requires more investment. It requires skills, knowledge, and sometimes you need to also go out and hire these developers, right? So it doesn't mean that that decision that you make at the beginning will just take over time. But if your app is successful and your business is successful, then maybe, yes, it makes sense to invest more in mobile. And that's where all the tooling comes into place. And from our experience also, the testing market in general, but also in mobile, it is fragmented. So depending on which framework and which tool, which type of app you're developing, it's like what tool is going to help me the most. We have, I think I counted over 10 different mobile testing clouds, at least today in the market. Maybe 10 years ago, SauceLab was one of the first ones that provided those capabilities. But then on top of that, a lot only specialize in mobile today. So you have to choose, from 10 different options. And that's just from where I'm going to be running my test. I might be using real devices or emulators. And these clouds provide you with these capabilities. Then what type of test am I going to be doing? It's not just the functionality of the app. Maybe you're testing security. Maybe you're testing performance, accessibility. So you have like a lot of different layers of testing and choices for each layer. And that can become overwhelming for someone that doesn't come from specifically mobile. And maybe you just go with what you know, right? If you're probably using SauceLab for web, you might be using it for mobile testing as well, and that's great because you're using one tool for 2 platforms. But sometimes you want specific features and maybe that tool is not providing, so then you go with one that is specifically built for mobile, and that's when it makes more sense to use it. So we've seen customers over the last 5+ years that they've been changing provider, they've been trying different tooling depending on where they are at in their maturity of testing their mobile apps. And also, as I mentioned, it just depends on what the skills of your team, like the people you have in your team and what they feel more comfortable using and how much you can actually invest in testing. Because I wouldn't say it's unlimited, but there's a lot of type of tests that you can do. And as I mentioned before, because you have at least a 2-week window to wait for feedback from production, we believe that even testing in mobile before you actually release is more important. It's critical. so you can get feedback quicker than web, that maybe you can do like a rollback if something goes wrong, very easy. In mobile, it's not that easy, specifically talking about native apps when you don't have that control over the update. I believe that it's very important to have a good strategy for testing since day one, and then be able to adapt it based on what your team and what your company needs. And on top of that, you add new tooling that basically will help you with automate as much as you can from the process. Still some manual testing is required, but I believe today there are different tools for automating the tests in mobile, supporting different type of platforms and frameworks as well, and also other types of non-functional tests that help you get that quick feedback and idea on like how well is the experience of the user before my app actually gets to my user's hand, right?
Get it. Sophia, I'm listening to you, and I'll be honest. First of all, excellent response. And I'm thinking to myself, though, as a DevOps advocate, the mobile testing environment, whether, regardless of which of the 10 clouds you're using or a combination of them and everything else, really truly is its own subset. But in making it so, have we siloed off mobile app testing from general app testing? We have we have a poll on that, Mitch. But before we do the poll, I wanted to ask Asaf. I mean, because it sounds like we have.
Yeah, there are. It's like the basic is the same, but then there are more complexity, which have shift a little bit sideways than the overall, right? If you test your web application, then you have multiple browsers that you want to cover. And I was at Sauce Labs back then, right? And at the beginning, dev teams were testing browsers, 20 different versions of browsers. But we see that people are mature, and then they look at the latest and maybe 2 more versions of the browser. There used to be IE, Firefox, Chrome, etc. And today, most is Chrome-based, like Edge is even Chrome, right? And Safari. That's roundabout. When it comes to mobile, the complexity is there. It's much more, and then the metrics is huge. Okay, Sophia, you mentioned about the quality, about having something that is fast to market, right? Because the competition is fierce. But the problem is that users are intolerant. Like they will install an application, it will not work, they will ditch it, and they will never come back. So users are much easier to click, remove, and go to your competitor. So quality is, you want to go fast, but you need to take very good care about planning what you want to do. So it's always the fight between fast time to market, higher quality. And when it comes to mobile, with all the complexity, you must plan. So, Alan, as you asked, the complexity is different, the metrics is different, your approach is different, and you need to plan. Do I test on simulators and emulator? Will it cover my use cases? Or do I need to introduce some real devices as well to the metrics, right? And using cloud vendors like Sauce Labs, Perfecto, Headspin, BrowserStack, all those, right? It costs money eventually. You need to define your metrics. Do I use local devices for authoring or local emulators? And eventually I do it on the cloud. If I have my CI/CD, right, it's a DevOps, it's a pipeline, you need to have devices always available and not, like your test will not fail because the device is not available. So maybe your local authoring is on local, and then you say, okay, I just keep the cloud devices targeted to my CI system to fully available in order to execute it. And if you're doing functional testing, you want to go deeper. And deeper means enhancing your automation cycle and going beyond functional testing. I want to do performance, as you mentioned. I want to do accessibility. I want to do single user performance and also how the device acts. If the CPU goes to 100%, if the battery is drained, if the device sensors is occupied by something else and there is conflicting processes. So you need to do a lot of planning and not just say, okay, it's just an Android, iOS application, iOS on Android, I just covered that. Rather, let's build the metrics, let's do the planning, let's define the strategy, how I'm going to do it. and build it, because local development to the team development to the integration to the CI/CD to eventually an automated process that pushes those applications to the App Store and do some monitoring and some accessibility or user acceptance test why it's actually available to users. And the next day, there is a new operating system. Just yesterday, Apple released iOS 16.3. There might be some breaking change, which is completely out of your reach. And you always need to monitor that, react fast. And if you react fast, it doesn't necessarily mean that the automation framework that you are using is able to react fast. If you are building on Appium, you trust Appium to be supportive of the latest version. You are ready to do it, but then the automation framework which you have selected might not be there. What do I do now? Go back to manual testing. So mobile is not as mature as web or desktop, clearly, right? It's an evolving market. It's an evolving space. You're always in a chase of the latest mobile operating systems and the devices and the enhancement in the space. And it's for several years already, but it didn't end. It didn't reach a level of maturity where you say, okay, now it's stable. The space and my horizon are really clear. It's not that. It's really always you need to monitor and enhance and grow your capabilities within the team, within your infrastructure, what the vendor is providing you if you're relying on Sauce Labs to do it or Headspin, right? So it's always changing.
Absolutely. Mitch, you want to run this poll?
You bet. Let's go ahead and put that up. I think Jared's running it for me this time. Here we go.
All right. So is your mobile development siloed from other app dev? It's on its own roadmap, but releases are coordinated with non-mobile apps, and it's tightly coupled to the release of other apps, meaning non-mobile. So if you could vote, we'd appreciate you.
There we go. They're rolling in. Once you voted, and now we're seeing the results. Jared knows what he's doing. Thanks, man. You got it working.
It's all right. It's all right. Let's see. Oh, here they come. Here they come. Guys, please, these polls are only as good as what you click on. So if you wouldn't mind clicking.
It's interesting.
Appreciate
that on its own roadmap is in the lead so far, staying in the lead.
Well, I think, look, I'm no expert, right? But clearly from everything Sophia and Asaf have laid out, mobile app testing has become its own animal, and it needs to, I think it kind of needs to be on its own roadmap. I'm not saying it needs to be siloed or anything like that necessarily by design, but how can you help it when we see it like that? We've got a comment, Mitch, from a audience member. It said, considering too that on the pipeline, right? I can't read it. UI automation test, right? There's yet another, kinds of test in here.
Well, I was posting about that in chat too. Also, one of Asaf's comments that the cost to switch or the effort barrier to switch is, unless you're like you have the mobile app for your payroll system, then you may not. But you can be on your 8th email application this month for Google email if you want. I mean, it is so easy to switch things. So if it's not, either may not be a great experience, or you may have people try a lot of things before they land on what they like. So it is extremely user centric. And you're referencing the days of browser testing, and my God, you said IE, I about fell out of my chair. But anyway, that's a whole nother era. It's that experience testing. It doesn't matter if it works great, but if it sucks, they won't use it, right? They'll move faster than you can spell sucks.
No, you don't get even a second chance, right? If it only takes one fail. I've learned that the hard way.
Even since the pandemic, I've talked with many companies, and they believe that even our tolerance it's just lower, because we've been so used to having good experiences that when you have an issue with an app, you actually see it. And I think it's over 80% of people will just delete your app without giving you that second chance. So it's huge. what's at stake if you don't provide that good experience.
Yep.
And it's just really, in a way, even exceeding sometimes like the experience you will have through the web. Like you as a user in your app, you want everything in your phone, you want everything to load fast. You are comparing, Facebook app to your app, even they have maybe, how many engineers in their mobile team, the user doesn't care. They're just using different apps every day, and yours is one more that it's competing with them for their attention. And that's when the experience, I think, becomes critical, that you provide that, fast response, that you provide, an app without issues, without crashes. And looking under the hood, a crash could happen for so many reasons, because maybe you didn't test in that specific version of Android or iOS, or maybe there's something that was happening that, an API call didn't get back and you didn't test that properly. So there's a lot of things that could go wrong. I think the key is that the user expectations are higher than ever before in mobile.
So to me, though, that kind of bangs heads with something I heard earlier, which is, and look, guilty. Let me just say that from the front. I'm guilty, right? That the impetus is get that mobile app out. Get that mobile app out. We need that mobile app out. Mm-hmm. Don't worry, just get it out and we'll fix it later, right? And so a lot of times we rush to market that mobile app, right? That's not fully tested, even, quite frankly, being honest, right? It's not fully tested. And then, you get 2 stars in the marketplace or the app store or whatever. And, and the buzz is, this is a terrible app, or it doesn't work, or what have you, terrible design. And then you say, okay, let's go back to the drawing board and get this right. I mean, as we sit here, that all sounds a little ridiculous, right? Why would someone do that? But yet, I think a lot of us are guilty of doing that. Sophia, you mentioned, I think it was you mentioned it in the opening, right? Is that more normal than we would think?
I think a lot of teams are realizing that you can't really achieve your goal if you just push it as fast as possible. And your goal could be different things. Actually, if you're validating an idea, but nobody uses your app, maybe your idea is good, but just the app is not good. So it's not even valuable as an MVP, as I mentioned. I have this very common idea that, it takes you 3 months to launch, that MVP and launch your app to validate an idea. But that validation requires that the user sees value. And sometimes to see the value, you have to test it thoroughly. The user needs to have a good experience, so they actually stick to your app, and you can start iterating. So that first version that typically we'll say in 3 to 6 months we have it in the market. It's not that common right now because of my thought is just having bad experiences and actually having to do some rework that at the end it will cost you more to do it right since the first time than actually trying several times. Having that said, as I mentioned, also you have a lot of frameworks today that help you to launch an app faster. You don't only have to go the native route, which in a way requires having developers in your team that know about Java, Kotlin, or Swift in iOS, right? And sometimes you even need, at least if you're going to be supporting 2 platforms in native, you need 2 different developers. That's how you get started. So it requires an investment upfront, going native first, but you have alternatives today that doesn't mean you're not going to be looking after quality, but it allows you to build faster. But you need to think about testing. It's either developer testing or you have a separate team that will actually take that app, test it manually, thoroughly the first time, and then you start adding automation for your next releases, right? Because again, this process is not I release it and then that's it. Even if you're validating an idea, you're going to be even more pushing changes and updating your app. And that's where testing becomes critical, because you might be introducing new bugs every time you do a change, right? So what we've seen is that idea, like I have my app ready and MVP, and even like getting a quote on how much will it cost to have an app ready, that cost has become higher. Because a lot of teams are thinking, okay, in order to do it right, I need to make sure that everything is taken care of, and testing becomes a big part. So it's not that I just develop it and then you make sure that it works, right? It's everything included in the same package, either if you have an internal team or you are working with a third party that develops that app for you. You have more options when it comes to the framework and technology, so you can make that process faster. But it doesn't mean that you can just release as fast without taking care of quality, because again, it's counterproductive. You're not going to be able to validate your idea. You're not going to be able to provide a good experience to your users, which were asking for your app, and then maybe they just switch to another competitor, right? So it might even be bad for your company and your image if you actually launch an app immature too early, because that's what your customers are asking for, but you haven't tested thoroughly, right? And this happened a lot with banks. Probably we all use different banks, and sometimes we have different experience with their apps that you just don't use a mobile app. They're trying to make you use a mobile app, but you don't use it because you don't like the first version of their app, right? Because they try to push it fast. So I think that's important. Even when we're just talking about a financial app, that maybe you just go and check your accounts and maybe do, make a check deposit with the mobile app. You don't really use it that much. If you don't have a good experience, it takes too long to log in, for example. It happened to me once with the bank I was using in the US. It just took too much time that I wasn't even using the mobile app. And sometimes you don't know what happens because the connection is lost, and you don't know, am I logging? Is my account being, hitchhiked? Like, you don't know. When you're working with financial apps, the user, it's even more critical that experience is good, because it brings up a lot of questions. I don't know what's going on with my account. It's crucial, actually, in specific type of apps, depending on the business, right? So again, like this idea of I can push my app fast and then I'll start improving it has shown that it's not the best strategy in most cases, because they're not providing that good experience and that first impression, which is critical to your user base, and actually can be counterproductive, because you're going to be losing some users because you just switch to a competitor and they're providing a better experience, right? So it's making sure that you have that plan, as I've said, and it doesn't mean that pushing faster, you have to don't take care of quality. I think that's something that everyone learned already.
Something that seemed that I think joins in the mix with that whole question of how fast you go, how much do you release, is also feature parity or not between mobile app and web or whatever other methods that you're delivering. Well, first of all, not every feature works well in a mobile experience, right? So some things are not. It's just hard to accomplish a good experience. But there's also users get frustrated with, well, now I got to go to the web to use that part of it that I like, a share feature that's not in my mobile version or whatever. But it does seem to me that question of coordination of features, updates to them, is something that causes multiple work streams of development to intersect together, and thus testing across platforms. Can maybe Asaf, can you speak about that a little bit? I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, so when we talk about cross-platform testing, I think we need to distinguish between web and then the native application, because web, take a basic scenario. You go to Amazon.com on your browser and you search for something, you put it into the basket, you might check out or not, right? And then you can continue from your mobile device. And on the mobile device, it can be a web application or it can be a native application. If you have a web application that you are testing from both desktop browser and mobile browser, you might utilize the same frameworks to do a lot of the testing, create a shared framework that allows you to reuse some components here and there. But on mobile, it's completely different, because the frameworks are different, the testing experience is different, the capabilities are different. So I think we need to distinguish between web, and it might be the same team, because a responsive web app, eventually, it's the same application presented differently on the mobile device. when a native app is completely different. And within native application, again, it might be native app for iOS, native app for Android, or it will be a hybrid application like React Native, Flutter, something of that framework, where you use one framework, you build something and you compile it, you build it to iOS or to Android, but you manage and you maintain one testing application, one app for dev and test, right? It's the same thing, just the last phase of deployment, testing that in production on your mobile device, but a lot of the services are really the same. So it depends what you would like to achieve and how you go there. And again, it brings us back to the decision of whether to go fast rather to be there, because some team says, okay, I'll just create a web application that works here and there. It might be the fastest because I adapt my web application now to run on mobile. Or if I want to go the native route, will I go with hybrid application or hybrid technology? That is easier. It might be the same technology. I'm building something in JavaScript and eventually compiled it here and there. So I don't need experts in iOS. I don't need experts in Android. Maybe just my DevOps team or those that are responsible for eventually building that on and compiling it to iOS or there. Or I'm using the full native application, which is Kotlin or Java on the Android pad, or whether it's Swift or Objective-C, which is on the Xcode part. So it's a lot of decision to take, and sometimes, again, you take the easy route or the fastest, but then you reach some limitation and say, okay, I decided to go with React Native because 2 years ago it was the top notch, but then there is a new technology and I'm hitting a barrier. Am I starting from scratch now? And I'm rebuilding everything and all my assets are completely lost. So it's kind of like a chicken and egg. It's always a debate. Do I go this route or the other one? I would like to achieve something and beat the competition, but then the user will not really like me, or my React or a hybrid application doesn't really provide the full experience of a native application when, again, my competitor might provide. So it's a lot of decisions to take place, and it's to take, and it's a lot of planning that needs to take up front. At least you need to be aware what you decide on, okay? You take all factors and you step into your project with an open eye, and you are not being surprised 2 weeks after or 2 months after, and all this budget went lost because you didn't really achieve what you wanted to accomplish.
Fair. Guys, we got a couple questions or comments and questions. One was thoughts on testing automation for mobile app, right? And I think, Safi, you've hit on some of it, Sophia have, but let's tie a bow on that.
Sophia,
yes. Go ahead.
Yeah, when it comes to automated testing on mobile, there are, if we discuss about native or hybrid application, there are 3 key frameworks which are a decision to take. It's either, if it's a native application on Android, I can go Espresso framework, which is built into the environment like Android Studio, and it's Java or Kotlin based. Or if I'm building an iOS application, I could go the native route coming from Apple and Xcode, that's XUI test. Or I want something which is shared, and then that's Appium, which is the open source kind of like framework, which is most mature. It's still evolving and growing, but it allows you to have one framework, and then you can target and support both operating systems. These are the 3 that are there. And there are other commercial solutions coming from different vendors that are providing you with something which is commercial, more expensive, but is more mature and also goes into the way of model-based testing, of recording and capabilities, machine learning and AI kind of like solutions that allow you to identify objects and have recovery and automatic fixing of the locator strategy of this application and your test automation. So I think today, unlike 3 years ago, it's much more mature. There are more offering, but it goes hand in hand with the decision whether you go with a hybrid application, the web application, or native, and which one. And again, it depends on the teams. If you already came from the web testing and most likely you used Selenium or some remote WebDriver framework, and now you go to mobile, so I might be using Appium, something which is similar, right, in its concept, in the technology. or whether I go something which is more enterprise, kind of like scale and capabilities, which is more commercial, but still providing those capabilities. So there are different solutions in the market. It's a matter of whether you target something specific to operating system or having a more generic that fits more the testing space and those that coming from QA testing and test automation.
Understood. Mitchell, if it's okay, poll question number 4. I think is something I'd really like to understand from folks. And that is, what do you use to develop mobile apps on? So is it, a general purpose language like Java or JavaScript, Flutter, which is, a lot of these are very popular open source. Whoop, Mitch, what happened to 4? Hold on a sec here. I think we might have messed that one up. We were, Mitch, yeah, here we go. So what do you use to develop mobile apps? And there's a bunch of different open source tools here. If you guys wouldn't mind maybe voting in. Oh, I don't know. Okay, I see results in the one channel, but not in that panel.
Yeah, there was a mix between poll number 3 and 4, I think. It was listed now 4, and the question was on the third one.
All right. Well, we tried on that, guys. Unfortunately, I would have liked to have understood. I understand the challenges, certainly, but wanted to get an idea of what the platforms we were using for. But in any event, I did want to mention, we do give out our Amazon credit card, our Amazon gift card winners. So, okay, 4's back up here. So please, if you guys can give us a vote on these, I just wanted to kind of understand what people are using. And I apologize. Well, React's way out there, general purpose is good. Excellent. While you're all voting, let me tell you who today's card winners are of our Amazon gift cards. We have Israel L, looks like Sophia R, Vanessa W, and Sarah Z. So congratulations. It's not Sophia on our panel, by the way. Her name starts with
Sophia
a P.
P. So.
Right, you're Sophia P. Sorry, you didn't win. But to the winners out there, enjoy something on Amazon for us, and thanks for being part of today's show. Things have tightened up, but it's still close between Apache Cordova and React open source. And then really close behind it is general purpose languages, which I had a feeling was going to be like that. Actually, React's in the lead. All right, let's close that one off. And, we have a few minutes left here. Asaf and Sophia, thank you so much for coming on today. I wanted to give you both a chance to kind of give your summation, your closing remarks here to our audience, and then give Mitchell a chance to kind of wrap things up if it's okay.
Sophia, I'll let you go.
Thank you, Asaf. To wrap up, I think Asaf mentioned, and I'm 100% aligned with that, mobile is still maturing as an industry, technologies wise. You need to, keep updating yourself and your team on the latest technologies and just make sure that things are working. But it also allows you to give and reach your users in a way that we weren't able to do it through web, for example. We can reach users at any time of day just by being, in their pockets. And, we've seen a lot of reports saying that people on average are using their phones 4 to 5 hours per day, which means that that's also increasing over time. So really thinking about your goal as a company, being able to have a mobile app up there, being able to reach your users through their phones, even if it's through a website that is mobile friendly, I think it is a must today. And it comes with a lot of challenges, but also it's an industry that is changing, it's improving, tools are becoming better. Things might seem, very fragmented as in that poll, but it's good because you have options, right? You have options. Most of them are open source, most of them are free. So I think it's the barrier to get started in mobile development is not as high as in the past. But at the same time, you need to have a plan. You need to be aware of the decisions you're making when you're choosing a technology and when you're choosing what tests to be running and where not. And also it's a huge community, both around Appium and all the tools that Asaf mentioned. So I think just also, don't be afraid to ask. Participate in this type of panels, I think also helps understanding where we are as an industry, and then moving forward what things we want to improve that as a whole will make us mature this practice of development, and also bringing DevOps practices into this specific space, which I think it has a lot to grow and just become better practitioners as a whole. So thanks for the invitation. I'm happy to share new sessions in the future around any of these topics that I'm very passionate about.
Absolutely. And Sophia, thank you. You brought some really great expertise to this. Asaf, how about you?
Yeah, so I think a key takeaway is planning. Really plan your development and your testing strategy. Define what you want to achieve and just do some planning. We want to run fast. It's a dynamic and it's an agile world, and the technology is evolving, but we don't want to make mistakes. So we want to step into that, as I mentioned, with open eyes and really understand the space and take conscious decisions what we want to achieve and how we are going to tackle that. Going the open source route is okay. Going web or hybrid or native application, everything is fine as long as you understand what are the implications, what the cons and pros, do your research, and define how you want to tackle that going forward and step into that. There are different solutions, as Sophia mentioned, open source, commercial, vendors which providing you with the device clouds for both development and testing. Emulators, simulators, or real devices, cons and pros to each one of those. You need to have a good understanding of the capabilities and how you want to achieve that. And another thing which is really important, always monitor the field. Monitor the field and understand what is happening, what is coming, what is forecasted. Like we know that Apple is releasing a new major operating system every fall, right? And you can hop on the new operating system earlier in the development and the alpha and beta versions, the public beta that they are there, and test your application up front. So listen to the market, monitor that, know what is coming, what is ahead, and always keep up to date, because it's not static. It's really dynamic, it's evolving, it's growing, and you need to be constantly up to date with your development and testing capabilities to ensure that you are competitive. So I think this is very important.
Thank you, Asaf. That was great. And thank you for your expertise here. Much, much appreciated.
Happy to.
Mitch, bring it home. Oh, you're on mute.
Thank you there. I want to add my thanks to Sophia and Asaf. Amazing experts. And I learned a ton from our conversation. Also learned from our audience. I was encouraged to see that on that first poll, we had 54% saying that they're doing DevOps as part of their mobile development, another 27%. So they're planning to do that in 2023. I was curious to see what we'd hear there. That's encouraging to me. Also, the other takeaway for me is it's so easy to get wrapped up in cloud native or get wrapped up in cloud development or web development and sort of treat mobile as this other thing that happens in parallel. It's just as complex, if not equal or more in some ways, in its own ways, and it has its own considerations. And I think there's some extremely strategic decisions we have to make about how we're doing the development, how we're doing delivery, how we're doing feature parity, all of those kind of things. And then building in that continuous cycle of being able to keep up with technology changes, upgrades, all of those kind of things. It's a lot of cognitive load that you can't be an expert in all of it. So having talent in the mobile area, whether you're using an external firm or internal development team, is it's vital to have. It isn't, I like to say, many product managers say, I'd like fries with that. I'd like mobile with that. It's not that easy. There's a lot here. And I think we've just scratched the surface. I hope we can continue this conversation.
Mobile is no longer the fries with the burger. It's, what's it? The tail of the dog. It's not the tail of the dog either. It's the main.
It is the burger.
It's the big dog. Anyway, panel, Mitchell, most of all, you, our audience, thank you for joining us. Big shout out to Tricentis. We couldn't do this stuff without them sponsoring it, and more than just sponsoring. I mean, they actively help us find people and promote and do everything else. Great partner to work with. We'll be back. Our next Techstrong, of course, won't be live like this. You'll be able to catch it. Our next DevOps Unbound, rather, won't be live like this. You'll be able to catch it on Techstrong TV. But we'll be back in a month or so with our next live roundtable, and we encourage you to come out and check it out. Until then, though, this is Alan Schimmel for Techstrong. We're out. Good luck. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.